Awesome. We are live. We're live for the full moon in Gemini. Let's wait for people to come in as I unwrap my spam masubi. Wait for everybody to come in. Good morning. Hope everybody's doing well. Happy full moon in Gemini. Good morning, everybody. So we're live on Instagram and this is being recorded for the YouTube. We're going to be talking about the full moon in Gemini today. Let me just open this real quick. Get my spam masubi going. I'm a little hungry. I have a busy day today, so. Mm, mm. Bomb. What's up, everybody? So, really excited to talk about the full moon in Gemini today. Let me get it going. Let me pull it up, actually. Did everybody sleep well last night? I always have a hard time sleeping during full moons, like, especially like a Gemini full moon. Gemini is like the mind and the nervous system. So, our nervous system, if you got ADD, ADHD, anxiety, okay, any of the E's, um, you're gonna be feeling this full moon a little bit. It might amplify and intensify your nervous system or your nervous energy if you have that, or your anxiety and stress levels and stuff can be a little bit more. We can be a little bit more aware of our stress with this full moon. So, okay. So just be mindful of that. Make sure you're really taking care of your nervous system. Oh my God, did I inhale a piece of rice? What happened? Mm. Oh, I want to bite. Oh, I don't want to bite on the plastic. Oh, wait a minute. Mm, mm. Oh, oh. Okay. Someone said, "Is that why my baby girl would not sleep? She fell asleep around midnight." She's yeah, a lot of like restlessness with this full moon, mental overwhelm, mental exhaustion. All right, so let me put the full moon on the rising. Hold on. So the full moon's happening today. Um, Hold on. Let's see what's on the rising right now. Oh, yeah. Oh my God, the rising's at 24 degrees Capricorn, which is exactly my moon, and the descendant's at 24 Cancer. Jupiter's actually setting right now. Crazy. Oh, we have the full moon coming up in like a few hours. Okay, let me put it on the rising. Hold on. Wow, the rising is right at 24 degrees, right on my moon in Capricorn. That's so crazy. Oh, cool. I just went straight to the full moon. I went 6 hours away from now, and we have our full moon. So, okay, well, let me get for all you like Mercury people out there, let me get you the deets. Let's give the details. So it's going to be at 6:13 p.m. Eastern time, the full moon. That's the exact time, 6:13 p.m. And it'll be at 3:13 p.m. Western or Pacific time. Okay. This is a full moon that's happening at 13 degrees, which is a Aries degree. So when we're talking about the sign of Aries for the full moon, we're talking about conflict, anger, fighting. We're also talking about individuality, our passions, going our own direction, kind of doing our own thing, being a little bit more independent. So one of the things you'll probably notice during this full moon for yourself or even with others is that people are feeling a lot more individualistic. They're not really concerned with what other people are thinking or saying or feeling. It's more about what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I need to do, right? My passions, my desires. There's like this is a full moon that's highlighting your individuality and your individuation from others. So if you've been dealing with like codependent situations, you've been dealing with like very confusing boundaries with others, and stuff like that. This full moon's going to invite you to have a conversation. Gemini's talking, conversation, words, communication, writing, letters, phone calls, emails, the neighborhood, the postman. This is all Gemini stuff. All these things are connected to Gemini, right? But we're using communication to figure out some really deep, intense things during this full moon. And the reason being why there's like a this energy, there's like eighth house energy. Oh, no, my bad. Sixth house energy for the full moon is because the ruler of the full moon in Gemini, which is Mercury. So the ruler of Gemini is what planet? Mercury. And we have Mercury in the sign of Scorpio. And Mercury is at 22 degrees Scorpio in the sixth house away from the full moon. So with the sixth house being highlighted, things like work, your job, your coworkers, your routines, your health practices, okay? And keep in mind, this is a full moon in Gemini ruled by Mercury, who just went direct after being retrograde over the last 3 weeks. So the full moon in Gemini is kind of like a call to action with whatever the Mercury retrograde over the last 3 weeks was like showing you, like whatever information came to the surface, whatever thoughts, ideas came to the surface, whatever important conversations that you are feeling that need to be had and you haven't had them yet, but it's coming, or maybe you've had those conversations and where it's like an ongoing conversation and working through things with others, right? Um, the other thing is, with Mercury in Scorpio, right? There's this energy of hidden, secret, private, taboo, forbidden information coming to the surface for the full moon and us having to do something with that information. Also, because the ruler of the full moon is Mercury in Scorpio, there could be really intense emotions that come up with this full moon that are about jealousy, possessiveness, betrayal, rejection. Like you can have to confront some really intense emotions during this full moon that are connected to Scorpio energy. So if there's like heavy emotion that comes up for you during this full moon, or because you're going to want to talk about it, you're going to want to process it, you're going to want to do something about it with this full moon because the full moon's at an Aries degree. So with Mercury in Scorpio, right, and the full moon pulling from Mercury in Scorpio, and the full moon being at an Aries degree, it's like with the information that's coming up or with how I'm feeling, like I need to talk about it. I need to do something about it. I need to write a letter. I need to make a phone call in order to like process this, in order to figure this out. This is a wonderful full moon for problem solving. Gemini is a problem solver. Well, I think Virgo is more like Virgo tends to be like that, but yeah, this is like Gemini is like problem solving. So like testing when you take like a standardized test, like when you take the SAT and stuff like that, that's Gemini. Gemini rules like, well, it's kind of like Saturn too, but it's like, but the idea of like schooling and education and like having to take a test and stuff, that's like Gemini. All that's Gemini. So there's this energy, this download I got. Oh my God, hold on, let me just I spilled a little bit of rice on the floor. There's this download I got around like, you know, with the information that we received, we're either going to be tested with that information to do something about it, or we're testing others with the information that we received. Someone said, I was missing my brother. I have a rough relationship with, so I texted him and miss him. I texted him, I missed him, and we had a healing convo with apology. Yeah, that makes so much sense because Gemini is what? The sign of siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, extended family, right? The moon's in Gemini. So the moon is having us focus on Gemini things, our neighbors, our neighborhood, our local environment, you know, education, learning, teaching, information, the processing of information, important conversations with these people, right? So, Gemini being the sign of siblings, it makes sense that in some way, shape, or form for many people, siblings are going to be a focus during this full moon, but also because of the Mercury and Scorpio, deep transformational healing in some type of way associated with Gemini things, right? So healing, healing sibling relationships, healing relationships with aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, things like this, extended family coming together. And, what is this down here? Hold on. I'm just like, okay, hold on, give me a second. I got a lot going on over here. I gotta like, I'm just like making a mess. I don't know how this spam masubi is getting so messy, but it is. Let me finish this really quick, and then we can like just dive in. You guys are getting what is that? Mukbang content. I almost said bukkake, and that's not right. So just let me finish this real quick, and then we can jump in because I'm like distracted. I have a really busy day today, so someone said mukbang. Someone said ASMR. Let me finish this. Oh. Mm. Mm, 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 mm. Mm, 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 mm. For those of you that go way back with me, you know that eating on my live is like a common thing. I've been better at it, but yeah, haven't been doing it as much. Spam masubi. Oh yeah, there's a place by my house that does spam masubi, and it's like mom. Okay, let's dive in. All right. So, quick recap. Full moon in Gemini, 13 degrees, an Aries degree. Mercury, the ruler of the full moon, is in the sixth house in Scorpio. So the full moon is asking us to deal with sixth house things and the sixth house topics: our job, our health, our routines, our habits, our behaviors. This full moon is having us process really deep emotional stuff with others, and with whatever was uncovered or with whatever was you know, stirred up, whatever was triggered, whatever was revealed to us during the Mercury retrograde over the last 3 weeks, this full moon in Gemini is asking us to do something about it. Okay. So we have the moon in Gemini, but we have the sun, Mars, and Venus all in the sign of Sagittarius. And we have Mars and Venus in the seventh house of partnership. Okay. From the moon, because a full moon is always when the sun and the moon are opposite each other. So, with that being said, with Venus and Mars in seventh place from the moon in Gemini, and with the sun, there is going to be a focus on relationships and partnerships, but it can be a little difficult, a little hard. It can be a little complicated because of the influence of Mars. So, what's so interesting is for the full moon, we have Mars at 22 degrees, Mercury at 22, Mars at 22 degrees Sag, Mercury at 22 degrees Scorpio, and Chiron at 22 degrees Aries. So there is a strong 22-degree activation with the full moon. And 22 degrees is a hard degree. It's a Capricornian degree, but it has a lot to do with challenges and struggles with others. And has a lot to do with like survival and struggle. So with Mars and Mercury at 22 degrees, especially, and Chiron, this kind of gives me having to assert ourselves, having to fight for ourselves, with information that we've received or with important conversations that we need to have. Some of them can be very difficult or very hard or very contentious, where there's anger, or there's frustration, or there's like built up emotion over a long period of time around certain topics or certain things. So we want to like deal with it with the other person, and it's like we want to work through some kind of healing with somebody or with others, right? We want to work on healing our mind with the sun, Mars, and Venus and Sag. Though, and the sun and Sag, this is about the vision, this is about the dream, this is about our goals and our ambitions, like the journey. And what I love about Gemini and Sag energy, and what I love about this full moon, and which is what I've been feeling over the last few days, is kind of like this lightheartedness and this fun and this kind of like innocence and this joy that we get with the signs of Gemini and Sagittarius. There's like a there's like a happy-go-lucky energy that we typically see with Gemini and Sag. But if we don't feel that with this full moon as much, it's because the dispositor of the full moon is Mercury in Scorpio, and the dispositor of the sun in Sag is Jupiter in Cancer. So we still, there's, even though it's like it's an air, fire, full moon, It's very watery in a lot of ways because of the grand water trine that we still have in the sky between Saturn, Mercury, and Jupiter. And what's really cool about this full moon is that it does have a grand water trine feature in it. So we have Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury in the second, sixth, and tenth houses. So this is a beautiful full moon to get into alignment with like work, career, our self-worth, our values, our routines. Kind of like we're thinking about our goals and our dreams and the bigger vision. The full moon is squaring the North Node in Pisces, and it's also squaring the South Node in Virgo exactly. So we have what we call a grand cross between the full moon and the nodes. So what this tells us is that there is a karmic turning point, or there's like very important decisions and choices that we need to make during this full moon and Gemini cycle over the next 2 weeks. That's like North Node in Pisces, reaching towards faith, reaching towards optimism, reaching towards the unknown, reaching towards being a little bit more ambitious, being a little bit more disciplined, because the North Node is in the 10th house, right? So if we put the full moon on the rising, the moon in Gemini on the rising, we have the North Node in the 10th with Saturn there. So, right? And the Saturn loves being in the 10th house. The North Node in the 10th has a lot to do with worldly success, worldly ambition, our forward direction, kind of like the vision, the dream, and how we're here to show up in the world, how we're here to show up in the outside world. Like, what is our calling? What is our mission? What is our purpose? How do we want to serve the world collectively and things like this? This is what's coming into question. This is what the North Node is pushing us toward. But the South Node in Virgo, right? With the full moon in Gemini squaring the South Node of Virgo, Sun and Sag squaring the South Node of Virgo, this is moving away from the small-mindedness, moving away from having to have everything perfect and having to have everything figured out. And you need to have the plan and we need to have the process and kind of moving away from seeing things in a very mechanical, micro, small way. Like we're moving towards North Node in Pisces, optimism, faith, kind of like moving in, we walk by faith, not by sight, right? Like North Node in Pisces, moving away, South Node in Virgo, moving away from this kind of like this like nitpickiness and this self-criticism and this self-doubt and this constant anxiety and this paranoia and this nervousness about life. It's like, no, we can actually, North Node in Pisces, in Saturn in Pisces, we can surrender. We can have faith. We can allow things to unfold in divine timing. We don't need to micromanage. We don't need to plan. We don't need to criticize. We don't need to judge. We don't need to nitpick in order to get where we need to go, right? So we're moving away from the South Node in Virgo with this full moon in Gemini, and we're moving towards the North Node in Pisces. But when the full moon squares the nodes, we're being asked whether or not we want to do the North Node or we want to do the South Node, right? So there can be with this full moon aspecting that South Node in Virgo, we're moving away from certain things that do bring us stress or anxiety, or we're moving away from certain things that are no longer serving us. So the South Node in Virgo could be like letting go of a job, letting go of a routine. It's in the fourth house from the full moon. So letting go of your past, letting go of your history, letting go of that family trauma, letting go of that narrative you tell yourself, well, I grew up this way and my mom was like this and my dad wasn't there and not allowing those narratives, those stories, South Node in the fourth house to hold you back from North Node in the 10th. From doing your bigger vision, doing your bigger dream, doing your own thing, being independent, right? Whatever that means to you. And so I really do think that, there's this invitation with this full moon to really release ourselves from stories, right? Gemini and Sagittarius, you know what these people are? They're storytellers. These people are storytellers, okay? And this full moon wants us to let go of any unhealthy, unnecessary, or outdated stories that we tell ourselves that are no longer serving our becoming or no longer serving the future that we're meant to build or the future that we're meant to move towards. And this has a lot to do with surrender and detachment, And this also has a lot to do with like forgiveness and just like letting go and realizing like, you know what? There's nothing back there for you. The past is still the past, a bridge to nowhere. One of my favorite lines. It's in a Sufjan Stevens song. That's the name of the song is I Should Have Known Better. But one of my favorite lines from that song is the past is still the past, the bridge to nowhere. Because there's nothing back there. It won't do going back to the past, rummaging through it. It's like going through a storage unit. Like you're not gonna find anything new there. You're just gonna a lot of times when we put stuff in storage, it's because we don't want to let that shit go. And we just let it fester in the storage unit and we're spending money on it every month, but we don't even want that stuff. We don't even need that stuff. You know what I mean? It's old. We go back to it. We're like, why the hell did I keep this shit? I should have thrown this out instead of putting it in the storage. It's like that type of energy. What do you need to throw out? What do you just need to let go of? What are you trying to hold on as a keepsake, but you're holding on to trauma as a keepsake? You're holding on to that resentment. You're holding on to the betrayal. You're holding on to your mother and your father wound. You're holding on to, that anger that you have towards your sibling. Full moon in Gemini, the anger you have towards your sibling, the anger you have towards your aunt and your uncle, right? And there's an invitation to talk about it. If moving on for you is let me talk about it, let me express myself, let me address something, let me communicate something that I wasn't heard, I wasn't listened to when I was younger. They're not listening to me. They never heard me, but now this full moon in Gemini is like, say something about it. Let them know what your experience was. Have a conversation and ask meaningful questions. Oh, look at my day at a glance from CoStar just said keep moving forward. Look, you can't make this up. It literally the drop down just came down because my daily message from CoStar is keep moving forward. Right as I'm talking about it. Look at that. Full moon in Gemini talking to us already. Because Gemini rules social media. Gemini rules this like random communication that we get sometimes from the radio, from a television. We've all had these like moments with technology where, technology talks to us, or spirit and the divine uses technology to talk to us in some type of way and send us a message. Sometimes it's a commercial, sometimes it's a song that comes on the radio, sometimes it's a random message that you get, or like a fraudulent text message that you get, through your phone. And it's like, and then the name of the fraud person is like someone important that or that has passed on or something, right? Communication comes through in so many ways. And this is one of the beautiful things about being on the spiritual journey. And once you start developing a relationship with like tarot, astrology, any kind of divination science, or you start developing a relationship with like God, spirit, the divine, the universe, however you envision that or however you embody that for yourself, the universe talks back. Spirit talks back. God talks back. The divine talks back. Your ancestors, they talk back to you. You ask them questions. You ask for guidance. You ask for information. And you know what they do? They give it to you. They talk back to you, but they send it to you in ways um, that can be a little indirect. And that's why you got to pay attention. That's why when we are really in alignment with Gemini energy within ourselves, the mind becomes an antenna for universal consciousness. Like the mind is not just a prison of anxiety and stress and overthinking, paranoia and indecision. The mind becomes a vessel for enlightenment. And that's what the Buddha was teaching us. And that's what also Hinduism and in the Bhagavad Gita teaches us. The mind is a vessel for enlightenment and self-becoming. The mind is either, this is what the Bhagavad Gita says, the mind is either going to be your prison or it's going to be your friend. The mind is either going to be your enemy or your friend, right? And so with the full moon in Gemini, we're kind of invited to heal our relationship with Gemini energy, with the mind, with our consciousness, with our speech, with communication, but also with how we interact with the universe and spirit and the divine and communicate with them and how they communicate with us, right? And we got to pay attention to the signs and the symbols. We got to be listening. We got to have our antenna clear, right? And this is when, all the intuitive and spiritual and psychic gifts start to come online. But we got to get clear with our Gemini energy. We got to really work on our mental health. We got to work on mental stability, mental clarity, mental peace. These are things that are very, very important. Mercury is a very finicky planet. Mercury is a very wishy-washy planet. Mercury is a very unstable planet. Think about it. Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year, right? Mercury is an unstable energy. He's an unstable planet. He's very small. He's very sensitive. He's very fast moving, he's very stressed, he's very anxious, right? So with that in mind, taming Mercury looks like, slowing down the mind, breathing, breath work, meditation, peace, calmness, clarity, also neutrality sometimes. I think that's another thing that, we always see Gemini playing devil's advocate because Gemini can really be in a place of neutrality when it comes to a lot of different things because Gemini is objective. Gemini is just looking at the information. The belief, the opinion, how, right, is Sag, right? When we're arguing about when it's like Gemini's information and facts that's unbiased. Like these are the stats. This is the information. Gemini, right? Sag is our beliefs and how we feel about it, and our opinions and our ideas that are not necessarily rooted in fact. Gemini. Those are opposing things. We can have really intense beliefs and ideas and opinions about things that's not rooted in any kind of information, but it's more rooted in our own personal experience, right? Like many of us, we form beliefs and opinions and ideas based off of one experience that we have. We can have a really bad experience with, like, for instance, we can go to a Denny's, right, and have a terrible dinner or terrible breakfast at Denny's, whatever. And then we can form an entire opinion about Denny's and be like, Denny's sucks. Denny's is horrible. Denny's is like whatever, whatever, right? Based off that one experience. Where Gemini is like, let me go to multiple Denny's and let me go ahead and rate and test them and let me go ahead and see what my experience was and let me go ahead and get a medium, let me get a median grade and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add it all up and I'm going to go ahead and give them a medium grade, right? It's like using the objective information in order to go ahead and get to the opinion or the idea instead of just basing it off of one experience, which is a very much a Sag thing, right? So I think it's really important about this full moon in Gemini is like we want to be objective. We want to take a look at the information that we're dealing with. We want to take a look at the conversations and the communication that we're having. And we don't want to be too overly opinionated or too overly invested in how we think about it in our own opinions. Yes, those things are important, but Gemini, the sign of Gemini, are you guys there? Can you guys hear me? Someone tried calling me. I just put my phone on do not disturb. Are we here? Are we back? Can you guys hear me? Let me know if we're back. I'm gonna pour myself some more tea. I got myself like a green tea chamomile ginger mix. Are we here? Can you guys hear me? Can you guys see me? Give me a yes, give me a thumbs up, give me hearts. I'm not seeing any communication in here. Let me get my iPad real quick. I think closing out the window and reopening it messed up the communication. Oh, I'm lagging. Are we back? Do you guys see me? Do you guys see me? Can you guys hear me? Oh, what's going on? No. Hold on, I'm gonna pause this really quick. I'm gonna pause this for the YouTube. Okay, I had to restart the live on Instagram. I'm just gonna post like a two-part thing for this, for the full moon on Instagram. But it'll all be together in one video on YouTube. Let's just wait for people to come back. Okay, cool. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry about that. Someone called me and I didn't have my do not disturb on. So, welcome back. Let's wait for everybody to come back. Um, it's gonna show, I'm gonna post two separate lives. because of what just happened. But it'll all be on one thing when I post it to YouTube. So, okay. But yeah, so we were talking about the full moon in Gemini, and what was I talking about? I don't even remember where I was at. I think I was talking about us having to be a little bit more objective around information that we receive for this full moon. And but we're gonna be feeling some type of way about it because we do have Mercury in Scorpio. So for the full moon in Gemini. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you guys for coming back. Don't know what happened there. Well, actually, do. Somebody called me and messed up my live, so that's what happened. I'm saying it was so good though, Denny's. Someone was saying Denny's. Yeah, so kind of like doing the research, getting the information, and being clear about it before we form any judgments or opinions, right? So we don't want to make the mistake with this full moon of jumping to conclusions. Okay? We don't want to make the mistake of jumping to conclusions. We want to make sure that we do the research. We want to ask clarifying questions with this full moon in Gemini, and we want to be a little sensitive with communication. The full moon in Gemini is giving us an opportunity to ask the right questions, to have the right conversations, and to not just jump into like arguments or fighting and stuff. Even though we may feel that way, I just really do think that there's going to be a lot of intense emotions and a lot of intense feelings around repressed conversations or things that we've been avoiding in our relationships with others. That's like there's stuff coming to the surface that we got to talk about, that we got to deal with, and that we feel a certain type of way about. Mercury and Scorpio ruling over the full moon in Gemini. Mercury and Scorpio is going to be bringing up these really intense emotions around, passion, secrecy, jealousy, envy, maybe some harsher, more negative or heavy emotions. But also, there's an opportunity for redemption. And I really do think that this full moon in Gemini is giving us an opportunity to redeem certain connections or to heal certain things by having very meaningful, important, transformational, transmutational conversations. Okay. And we want to go deep. This is a very important full moon for mutable signs. I cannot tell you if you are a Gemini, Sag, Pisces, or Virgo. If you have those in your big three, especially if you have them around the middle degrees, if you have anything around 13 degrees of a mutable sign, this full moon is a turning point for you. Okay, like this full moon is asking you, mutable signs, Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, Sag, are you going to continue to kind of play it small or are you going to go large? Are you going to continue to be a little anxious, paranoid, irresponsible, confused, indecisive? Or are you going to be intentional, directional, clear, concise, open, and courageous and brave, right? When it comes to the way that you're navigating your life. And I also do think for many people, this is a mutable sign thing, but this could be just be a collective message. This is like there's this full moon's gonna it's like a breaking point for some people. It's like I can't do this no more. I can't handle this anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. And I'm gonna go do this. And it's like we're gonna see them actually putting it into action or like doing something about it. We gotta remember. I love that for you. Lucy just said she spoke virtually at a conference for women in Dallas, Texas about domestic violence and abusive relationships. We're going big. I love that. Yes. That's beautiful. Yeah, and yeah, giving like a speech, Gemini, Sag. Gemini Sag. What I love about a Gemini Sag is with like in a party or in like a moment or whatever or at a like an event, they will give a speech. They will say something. Gemini and Sag will give a speech because they love talking. These are signs that love communicating. They love talking. They love expressing themselves. They love telling stories. These they love writing. They just love communication. They love exchange of information. And they want to be heard. Gemini is a sign that wants to be heard. Gemini could be a sign that's pretty loud or they get a lot of attention. Or when they're talking, they just like are very expressive. They're using their hands, they're using everything. They're using their hands, their fingers, they're using their everything, their whole body to communicate. And they're very performative in their communication. Why is that? Why do you think Gemini loves to be listened to and loves to express themselves and loves to be heard and all those things? Well, in the third house of communication, if you put Gemini on the rising, do you know what Gemini has in the third house away from their sign? Leo. This is why Gemini they can have a performative element to the way that they express themselves, right? And they just love being listened. They find a lot of joy, they find a lot of fulfillment, and they even get a lot of validation around communication and stuff, right? It's because yeah, Leo in the third house away from Gemini on the ascendant, right? Or Gemini rising. So it makes so much sense. So with that being said, we are being invited to really express ourselves with this full moon in Gemini. Write that letter, make that phone call, have that conversation, go dancing, go singing, go play, go have fun, Gemini is like our childhood years. Gemini is our student years. Gemini is this energy of like, the high school dance and kind of like the innocence and the silliness and the goofiness and the awkwardness and the, you know, um, purity, I would even say, of our childhood, of our upbringing, of being youthful. Gemini is a youthful, young energy. It's so interesting because I was talking about that in my stories yesterday with Sag Rising. Who was I talking about? Agatha, that writer? Agatha Christie. Yeah, Agatha Christie is a Sag rising, and she's got Gemini in the seventh house. And what you'll see, same thing with Pisces rising, because they have Virgo in the seventh. Because Mercury rules the seventh house for Sag and Pisces rising, they tend to end up with people that are younger or that are youthful or that are very kind of innocent and playful, but they're also kind of irresponsible. They're also kind of, wishy-washy a little bit. Mercury could be a really hard planet to tie down when it comes to partnerships and relationships. Same thing with Jupiter. Jupiter's the same way. Sag, Pisces, Gemini, Virgo. If there aren't strong indicators of relationship or like long-term connection relationship, it can be really hard, to stay because mutable energy, mutable signs, right? Gemini, Sag, Pisces, and Virgo, they're about change. They're about mutation. These are signs that adapt, they evolve. They're not in one constant state. They're not trying to, stay the same. No, they're trying to become something different all the time. They're trying to evolve, right? So with the full moon in Gemini and with all four, with like this grand cross with the full moon, we have the North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo. We have the Sun in Sag, or the Moon in Gemini, and they're all in a grand cross. They're all, grand cross with one another. It's like a karmic turning point where we have to adapt. It's how we have to evolve. We have to kind of mutate in order to go ahead and adjust to the times. What I love about mutable energy is, and especially with this full moon in Gemini, is our ability to adapt, right? Like the mutable energy gives us the ability, the gift of adaptation to circumstances and their ability to flex and bend, right? And like go with the flow. Go with the flow is such a mutable sign thing. It's such a mutable sign energy. Especially like I think of go with the flow as very Gemini Pisces. Well, Gemini Pisces and Sag, not so much Virgo. I don't think Virgo is a go with the flow type of sign. But Gemini, Sag and Pisces are like, okay, wherever the adventure takes us, wherever life takes us, I'm just going with the flow. But sometimes that go with the flow energy could also be a little bit of carelessness or apathy or recklessness. So we got to be mindful and intentional around adaptation and surrender and kind of like being in alignment and letting things just flow. But we also got to have direction. We also got to have intention. We also got to be like, not just a leaf blowing in the wind. We got to know where we're going in some type of way. We got to have an idea. We got to be engaging with the universe and with spirit and with the divine and with those around us. We got to be engaging in conversation with them around what we want, our goals, our dreams, our desires. We got to be as clear as possible with those things, because the universe has a direction for us. Spirit, the divine, right? It has a direction for us. We want to have an idea of what direction we're going. Okay? We want to know where we're headed in some type of way, or at least have an idea. We're not going to always know the answers. We're always not going to know, the universe and God and spirit is always going to find ways to surprise us. But we want to have a general idea, okay? So that the universe can support us and help us get there, okay? Directionality is really, really important. And I think that sometimes where the mutable signs, with Gemini and Sag, especially with Gemini and Sag, Pisces also deals with this. I think Virgo is a little different. Virgo is a little bit different in how it operates compared to the other mutable signs. But I think Pisces, Sag, and Gemini especially, they're signs that struggle with indecision and kind of like it's like a apathetic restlessness or recklessness. Kind of like, okay, whatever. Like, I don't really know what I want. I don't really know where I'm going. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of like going with the flow. I'm just kind of like doing it, going day by day. There's no bigger vision. There's no consistency. There's no drive. There's no passion. It's just kind of like going with the flow day by day, right? But that's not good. That's not healthy either. You know, we got to have a little bit. It's all a balancing act. We got to have a little bit of space and give life a little bit of space to do its thing and to allow for opportunity and possibility and the randomness and the beauty of the randomness that life can give us. But we also got to have direction and intention. We also got to set goals. We got to have an idea of where we're going and stuff like that. I think that's very, very important. So we don't want to be too much in the mutable energy. Someone said it's so hard choosing between two different places to live, so indecisive. But you already know. You already know. We already know. We know. We know. We know where we want to live. We know what we want to do, right? But a lot of times, what we do is we allow external factors, we allow other things, other opinions, other ideas, right? Or we even second guess what we're feeling, what the initial feeling, what the initial yes was, what the initial choice was, right? We go back on ourselves and we question ourselves and we allow doubt and fear and all these other things to confuse us from making a clear, concise decision, right? So I think it's really important with this full moon in Gemini, ask the question to the universe, ask spirit, okay, what is the best decision or choice for me, right? Or even like do some divination. Gemini is a sign of divination. Sag and Gemini are these, the ninth house is connected to divination, but Gemini, Mercury is the traditional ruler of astrology and of the divination sciences. Mercury, right? The planet, the only planet able to go to the underworld when we're talking about like Greek mythology, right? Mercury was the only planet that was able to go to the underworld. He's tasked with ushering souls to the other side of the veil, right? That's Mercury's job. So with that being said, right? We have access to information. Mercury, full moon in Gemini. We have access to information from the beyond, from spirit that can give us clarity around choices and decisions that we need to make. But there are definitely going to be people making very important choices and decisions over the next 2 weeks, karmically. And it's kind of like already written, it's already fated in some type of way because the nodes are involved. So this is a decision that you were going to make. You think you're making the decision, but you made that decision before you were even born. You know this? You want to know one of the craziest existential crisis type of things that I've had to deal with as an astrologer? Okay? Sometimes, okay, I can look at a chart and be like, I already know what someone decided to do based on their chart, or the chart or the transit will indicate what they're going to do or what choice or what option they're going to make. So a lot of times, so my one of my existential crises sometimes with astrology is, are the choices and decisions that I'm making, right? Are they actually my own? Or am I thinking that I'm making a decision or a choice, but that decision I've already made it, right? It was already scripted for me to choose this path instead of this path. It was already written that I was going to decide to do this instead of this, right? So we think we have a lot of agency and free will, but sometimes the choices or decisions that we make are fated in some type of way. Or like the universe and spirit already knew that we were going to make that choice, right? So it's like it's a very interesting thing. being in the profession of like divination and astrology and stuff, it's very interesting thing sometimes where I have to really ask myself, like, how much of our life is free will and how much of it is fate? How much of the choices and decisions that we make are kind of like scripted or already written, and how much of it is actually of our own volition, you know? Um, Very interesting. But yeah, I'm just, food for thought. But yeah, Gemini is a sign of what? Decision making, choices, options. I always think of Gemini as the multiple choice questions that we get on a test and stuff, right? Where you have to choose, you have to pick and choose. It's like choose your destiny, you know? But honestly, I think one of the most important things that we need to do is develop confidence. And this is just a collective message for everybody. We got to develop confidence around our own choices and decision making. A lot of mutable people can have an idea that they don't make good choices or decisions for themselves, or they could have even grown up in an environment where, their own autonomous choices and decisions were not supported or celebrated, or they weren't allowed to make mistakes, or their choices and decisions like options were taken away from them. So it's like, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. This is what it's going to be. There was no invitation there was no asking, oh, do you want to do this? Or what do you think? Like, what would be best for you? So, it's a process for many of us in developing confidence in our own decision making, developing confidence in trusting ourselves, like developing trust in your own decision making process, right? If we have a belief or an idea that I always make the bad choice, always make the bad decision, and then you have anxiety and fear around choice and decisions, well, guess what? You're going to make the wrong choice and the wrong decision all the time because that's the story that you tell yourself. And when you make choices out of fear, out of paranoia, out of anxiety, that's usually when you make the wrong choice and make the wrong decision. You always want to listen into your body and feel into your body when you're making a choice. You want to see how your body's responding to it, how your heart responds to it. How does it feel? Is your body telling you yes or telling you no? And you got to get really good at feeling in and listening in and like, trusting what you're feeling. When something feels like a no, when somebody feels like a no, when an opportunity feels like a no, listen to that, feel into that, trust that. You don't need proof. Sometimes it's just a feeling. It's just the gut feeling. It's just something in your heart, something your spirit is telling you. This is a fucking no. This is a no. This is, or stay away from this, or leave this be, or let this go, or this is dangerous, or this is not safe, right? We got to listen to our nervous system. We got to listen to our body. We got to listen to our heart. We got to listen to our gut. We got to listen to what the signals are telling us. You know what I mean? About any given thing. Because once we develop that kind of confidence and clarity with decision making and choices, and once we get clear with what a yes and what a no feels like within our body, but also within life and to ourselves, making options and choices becomes easy. And a lot of times you'll know right away, you know? Like with me, I don't know, maybe it's just the way that maybe it's my chart, just the way that I am or whatever. When something is or something isn't. Like I'm a very black and white person. Maybe it's my Scorpio stellium and my Capricorn moon, but it's either a yes or a fucking no. Okay? I've had to really work on the gray area. I've had to really work on letting the gray area be what it is. But for me, something's either a hard yes or a hard no. Okay? Right? Like that's how I am. That's how I operate. So but I've been better at being more allowing things to be in the gray. Like sometimes things aren't black and white. Sometimes things are very much in the middle ground, or sometimes things are very much in the gray area. So, letting that be what it is too is important. But yeah, so full moon in Gemini, really important conversations, choices, decisions that we're going to have to make that are kind of karmic and fated. And also, Mercury just went direct, Saturn just went direct. Mercury and Saturn are in a trine with each other with Jupiter with this full moon. So I really do think that there's this energy of moving forward with this full moon, right? We are coming out of, that Mercury Saturn retrograde, and I think it's really important that we lean into um this energy of bravery and courageousness and clarity and confidence in important choices and decisions that we need to make, even if they are hard. And this is important. This is a message from Saturn. Sometimes the best choice or the right choice is the hard, difficult one. And more often than not, it is. We like comfort and security. We want things to be easy, but most of the time, the thing that is safe or comfortable or easy is the wrong thing, is the wrong way. Okay? It's actually the thing that's hard, that's difficult, that's outside of your norm, that pushes you outside of your comfort zone, that challenges you, okay? That is like foreign to you. That is where the opportunity, that's where the growth, that's where the luck, or that's where the abundance, that's where the new experience, that's where the life is at, okay? So, and this full moon is inviting us to move towards making the hard choice that's the right choice. Okay. Don't be afraid. You never make a choice. Never not make. That's a double negative. Always make choices in confidence. Okay, and with clarity. Never make choices out of fear and out of paranoia. Never not. Ain't never not. Ain't never not make choices out of fear. Okay. I'm gonna do some wordplay right there. Ain't never not. That's a new. I'm coining that, by the way. Okay. No one else can use that. If you're gonna use it, you gotta DM me first. You gotta get my permission. Ain't never not. Okay. Triple negative. Ain't never not make choices out of fear and anxiety. Period. Gotta add that on there. Okay. Yeah. Most beneficial people who are benefiting from this full moon the most are going to be the fire signs and the air signs. Um, Air signs, this full moon is about money, work, career for you. Air sign risings. Houses two, well, actually it's activating houses one, five, and 10, or I'm sorry, 9. You're actually having the full moon in houses 1, 5, or 9, but the grand water trine is happening in houses 2, 6, and 10 for air sign risings. So if you're Gemini, Aquarius, or Libra rising. So it's interesting, even though the full moon is kind of like focusing on houses 1, 5, 9, Mercury's in houses 2, 6, or 10 for you guys. So I do think that the full moon is going to be very beneficial for air signs when it comes to work and career and money, but it's really going to highlight relationships and partnerships for you guys and really like who you are. Your beliefs, so if you're an air sign rising, the full moon could illuminate love, romance, your passions, your creativity, your identity, your personality. You want to change something about your style and stuff like this, or even your beliefs, your opinions, your ideas, the way that you see the world. You can find some expansion or growth around that and things like this. Okay. Um, if you're a fire sign, this is about your social life. Fire sign rising, Leo, Sag, Aries rising. This full moon is about your social life. It's about your public life. It's about your friends. It's about your neighbors. It's about your community. It's about your romantic life and things like this. Your love life. So the full moon's going to show you some information or is going to illuminate some things for you around that area of your life. But yeah, there's also a lot of deep emotional processing, a lot of stuff that you got to figure out emotionally with this full moon. My fire sign risings, Aries, Leo, Sag rising. So there's something about like relationships and partnerships and your community and your connections and your social engagements and how you've been feeling about them. Aries, Leo, Sag rising, and that you got to deal with. And there may be some, just people that you got to release or let go of, or there just may be some relationships that are outdated and they need some updating, they need some evolution. Okay. If you are a Leo, Sag, or an Aries rising, Earth sign risings, this full moon, if you're a Virgo, Cancer, or Capricorn rising, is about work and career for you. This full moon, you can be making more money, you could change jobs, you can get a promotion, or you can be like, hey, you know what? I want to do my own thing. I want to make money my own way. I'm not really feeling this anymore, something like that. Um, Also very important communications or very important conversations that you need to have with people around money, around the workplace, around the job. There may be certain things that you want to change with your routine and stuff like this. Virgo, Taurus, Capricorn rising. But yeah, your self-worth, your self-esteem, your relationship with money, your savings account, your entanglements, financial entanglements with others, possibly, your debts, your credit, things like this. That those might come into focus for you if you're an Earth sign rising, Virgo, Cancer, Capricorn, or Virgo, Taurus, Capricorn rising for the full moon. Okay. And then the last but not least, I'm going through these really quickly because I'm not gonna sit here for an hour. I have three readings to do today, so I'm not gonna sit here for an hour going through all the horoscopes, and I'm just doing this very lightly, very quick. Okay. The last one, water sign risings. Yeah, water sign risings. Um, Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio rising. Uh, the full moon is going to illuminate a lot of, 4, 8, 12, house 14, 12. So a lot of, deep emotional stuff, a lot of your fears or paranoias, a lot of, your traumas may get revealed. You may be feeling the need to rest or sleep more during this full moon. Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio rising. This full moon may ask you to withdraw from the world in some type of way so that you could take care of yourself and show up for yourself. So, I just feel like y'all are gonna need more sleep. You're gonna need more rest. You're gonna need to kind of maybe process some stuff over the last, you know, 3 months, 6 months, whatever. I don't know. I just feel like for water sign risings, it feels like the full moon is bringing up stuff from the past, and it's bringing up a lot of like your hesitations and your fears and your anxieties and stuff like this. And I think water sign risings, full moon in Gemini, you guys need to really trust yourself, and you really need to listen to yourself outside of, the echo chamber of other people's voices and stuff like this, right? Like listen to yourself, listen to your heart, listen to your desires, listen to your thoughts. Really trust what you want for yourself. And maybe you need some alone time. Okay, Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio rising. Maybe you need some alone time to really figure out where it is that you're going and what it is that you're doing and things like this. Okay. Um, Yeah. Also, water sign risings really quick. You may just need a break from work and stuff like that, you know? You may just need a break from work. You may need a break from your relationship. You may need a break from, your family. You just may need, whatever you've been carrying for other people, you may need to like put down or set down or put up some healthy boundaries so that you can really tend to yourself and things like this, okay? I already went over air signs. I talked about that already. Okay, you're gonna have to go rewatch the live if you want to go ahead and get that. Yep, you had to be here, my love. You should have been paying attention. Sorry, I already talked about it. All right, let's keep going. I got a little bit more time, but then I gotta get to my first reading for the day in a bit. So, all right. Any questions so far? For any questions? Anybody want to make any statements or ask any questions or anything? Let me pull this up. Hold on. What happened? Where did my full moon chart go? It disappeared. Oh, here it is. Okay, came back. She was showering. Oh no, I expect you to listen to me while you're in the shower, okay? You need to have me on a feed blasting into your entire house. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Um, Let me see what other things I could. What are some other things? Oh, so yeah, see, asking personal questions, my love, about your own individual chart, that doesn't really help us collectively. Someone said, how this affect me, Gemini moon in the second house. And that's where readings come in. With the nodes crossing, any insights on conversations around death and grief? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Quite literally, actually. Because Mercury's in Scorpio. The ruler of the full moon is Mercury in Scorpio, the sign of death, the sign of endings and transformation and grief, right? One of the signs of grief. Pisces is really a sign of grief, though, and we have Mercury trine Saturn. And we have the North Node in Pisces. So definitely conversations where things are ending and we are having to transmute and transmute certain things. We're having to excavate certain things, or we're having to talk about things that are very deep and very scary. And that can include death. That can also include money. That can include resources. That could include, or even receiving information that's very heavy, very sad. I do think that there's going to be people um, leaving jobs and losing jobs during this full moon cycle. We have the South Node of Virgo being aspected by the full moon. And but with that being said, we also don't want to hold on to that stuff or stay there. Like a lot of the reasons why we're going to have these conversations over the next 2 weeks that are about excavation and depth and death, possibly, or, where we're talking about our emotions to talk about grief and stuff like that. The reason why we're talking about those things is to process it and to release it and clear it out and move away from it so we can let it go you know and it's very important also. Mercury is going to be coming into an opposition with Uranus and Taurus in a few days. So the full moon in Gemini are ruled by Mercury, who's going to be opposing Uranus. There is this energy of kind of like wanting to rebel and wanting to separate and wanting to individuate and kind of wanting to emancipate oneself from certain things. So, if there's certain emotional, there's like if there's like emotional ish that we got to like work through and process, or even emotional ish baggage that we've been carrying, the Mercury Uranus opposition coming up in a few days is giving us this opportunity to really break away and free ourselves. Oh, look what someone said. Gemini Sun, Aries Moon, Libra Rising, and I literally just quit my job before this live. They won't break my soul. I had a health healthcare health scare early October and I had to reevaluate a lot. I'm going back into teaching and it feels right. Yes. Oh my God. Literally makes so much sense. Literally what I'm just talking about. Like leaving the job behind, making, going back to something or even moving towards something that feels right for you or that's in alignment with you. And yeah, full moon in Gemini squaring the nodes. It's like, are you gonna move forward or are you gonna keep doing the same thing? Are you gonna like embrace a new path, a new direction? Are you gonna write yourself a new story? Or are you gonna keep retelling yourself the same story and recycling the same narrative? Are you gonna get off the Ferris wheel and get on a new ride? Or are you just gonna stay on the Ferris wheel? That's what the full moon in Gemini is asking a lot of us, especially mutable signs, Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, Sag. So yeah. I love it. I love it for us. I think this is a really good full moon. I think it's a really healing full moon. Another aspect I want to talk about really quick is I want to talk about Mars and Sag trine Chiron and Aries. Because Mars and Sag trine Chiron and Aries for the full moon, this is an invitation to heal our relationship with our own power, to heal our relationship with our own authority, with our own anger, possibly, or with the way that we express power. Because Mars in Sag trine Chiron and Aries, right? That trine, that healing trine between Mars and Chiron. Chiron is in Mars's sign. Mars is in a pretty good spot when he's in Sagittarius. It's kind of like saying, you know, we need to heal our relationship with what it means to be courageous, or what it means to be with what it means to be courageous, what it means to be brave, what it means to be assertive, or what it means to be authoritative, or even contentious. I think many of us can feel that, being spiritual is being passive or submissive, or being, a peacekeeping and all loving and not being, angry or not asserting yourself or not fighting, right? Like, oh, there's something spiritual about, being peaceful and stuff. Yeah, there is, but have you ever heard of sacred rage? Have you ever heard, did you ever read the Bible and get to that part where Jesus was turning tables for the tax collectors selling their goods in the temple? And Jesus was like, fuck no. Okay? Like it's so crazy because once you start reading a lot of like spiritual texts about, or even like looking at certain people in history, like spiritual leaders and stuff, they were very pissed off. Many of them were very angry and very pissed off. Okay, and many of them were not. They were not having it. All right. And sometimes we can feel so disconnected for from our anger, from our power, from our authority, or we can feel like it's not divine. It's not like godly or it's not spiritual to be mad and to be bothered by things. But no, okay? There's a special place for your rage and your anger, okay? When it comes to justice, when it comes to equality, when it comes to fighting for truth, fighting for integrity, fighting for good and righteousness, right? Like, yes, that's the place for it. That's where it's supposed to go, okay? So I just want you guys to keep that in mind with Mars and Sag, Trine, Chiron, and Aries. Another thing that's really interesting in the sky that's going to be building, and we're going to talk about it next week, but it's coming up. It's already we're seeing it already with the full moon. Is Mars square Saturn? Okay, so Mars is go and Saturn is stop. Mars and Sag is, let's go travel, let's go expand, let's go do this, let's go try something new, let's go jump out of a plane, right? Let's go cliff diving, let's go whatever, right? Mars and Sag and Saturn and Pisces is like, wait a minute, no, are you sure? Wait a minute, you can't. Wait a minute, you're not ready. Wait a minute, you need the permit. Wait a minute, you're afraid. Wait a minute, you got to conquer your fear, right? Like that Saturn Mars square, right? Is the tension between stop Saturn and go Mars. So I want you guys to be mindful of this Mars Saturn square because we may feel like asserting ourselves, or we may feel like pushing up against something, we may feel like challenging something, or possibly forcing ourselves through something at this moment in time during this full moon cycle. But then Saturn is telling us, no, it's not the right time. You got to wait. You got to be patient. You got to trust. You got to have faith. It's Saturn in Pisces. So you got to trust. You got to have faith. You got to listen in, right? It could be like a timing thing, right? So I want you to just be very mindful of the square that's building between Mars and Saturn because that is a very contentious square. Mars and Saturn are the malefics, they're the more negative planets. And when they form a square with each other, that's a harsh aspect, that's a challenging aspect. So that could look like a few different things. That could also look like us challenging authority figures or us challenging the government. So I won't be surprised if during this full moon cycle we do see people challenging political figures, spiritual figures, spiritual leaders. You even in your own personal life, you may be like, you know what? I'm going to stand up to my dad. I'm going to stand up to my mom. I'm going to stand up to my spouse. I'm going to stand up to my eldest child. I'm going to, for some of you, because I don't know, for some of you, listen, your kids, they be walking all over you, okay? You got to get that together. I'm going to stand up to my eldest. I'm not going to let him walk all over or let her walk all over me anymore. There's this energy of kind of like pushing up against an authority figure or pushing up against rules and regulations that are no longer serving us, or even like asserting boundaries. And I think that's another thing that's a possibility with this full moon in Gemini with Mars square Saturn is, you know what? I need more boundaries. I need more protection. I need more space. I think Gemini and Sag are signs that do need space, especially in relationship and partnership. Gemini and Sag are signs that, they are a little bit more independent. They're a little bit more self-sufficient. They need a little bit of wiggle room. I always think of Gemini and Sag as signs that need wiggle room. They need a little bit of room, space to play. Um, they're not trying to feel all boggled down and they're not trying to feel all, you know, um, overwhelmed or all entrapped. Like the Gemini and Sag do not like that feeling. They don't like the feelings of entrapment and feeling stuck and feeling burdened and all that. They like space, they like freedom, they like movement. And we even see this with jobs. It's so interesting. Gemini is like the postman, and Sag is like the flight attendant, and they're always on the go. Their job doesn't look this. Gemini, the postman, is always walking through the neighborhood, talking to this person, talking to this person. Collecting the narratives, collecting the stories, right? The flight attendants, they're going to different countries. Their schedule's always looking different. There's always a different adventure. There's always a different journey. And that's one of the things that I really love about Sag and Gemini energy is this openness and this willingness to like adventure and explore. There's like a curiosity, there's like an innocence, there's like a let's go ahead and play with this. And there's like a it's like that curiosity gets them in these really funny, interesting situations that are where they always have a story to tell. There's always an adventure. in some type of way. I got to tell you about my adventure. This, oh my God, look what I did for the weekend, right? Gemini and Sag. I got to tell you what I did. Oh my God, I went here and I did this, and you won't believe who I ran into. You don't believe what happened to me, right? We kind of want to lean into that energy. You want to lean into like really positive storytelling and, curiosity and kind of like expansion and playfulness and lightheartedness. Even though this full moon is gonna, the Mercury and Scorpio and all the water energy in the air is gonna pull us towards being a little bit more emotional or towards like processing things or towards like our feelings. We want to really embrace the lightheartedness and the fun and the joy and the innocence and the playfulness of Gemini for this full moon. It's been a very heavy year. You know, we've had the eclipses going through Pisces and Virgo. We've had Saturn in Pisces. We've had Jupiter in Cancer. We've had all this Scorpio energy, right? Like, we had this Scorpio energy over the last few months. And we need a break. We need a little bit of lightheartedness. We need to have some fun. We need to play a little bit. You know what I mean? And I think that's what this full moon in Gemini really invites us to do is to reconnect to the energy of like play. Going on the playground. Let's go on the swing. You know what I mean? Let's go let's go to the fair or something like this. But yeah, a lot of people traveling and stuff as well. We're actually going to see that more with the new moon in Sag. I was looking at the new moon in Sag a few weeks from now. We're going to see people traveling and stuff with the new moon in Sag. Um, but yeah, getting travel plans together and stuff like that for sure. But this is a very important time, my loves, for especially for mutable signs. Very important time. Like your decisions, your choices, the moves that you make. Coming out of this year, going to next year, the moves, the decisions and choices that you're making now, like the big life decisions and choices that you're making are part of a larger narrative or story or part of setting a foundation for of the future that can be a long-term thing. So, I want you to just keep in mind that decisions or choices that you make right now can have a long-standing impact or that can have a, they can have a domino effect and reverberate into the future. In what may seem like a small or insignificant choice or decision today could become something bigger or larger tomorrow, or the impact of it, you can see the fullness of it later on down the line. So I just want you to be very mindful of that. Not to put any pressure on you, but just so that you can be a little bit more intentional and conscientious of the choices and your decisions you're making coming out of this year during this full moon and Gemini cycle so that you can really think about like where you're going in your future, right? Sometimes we can be so impulsive and we can be very short-sighted in the way that we make choices and decisions, and we're not really considering or thinking about the long-term impact it's going to have. And I think it's very important that we kind of slow down right now and we really, before we commit to something big or before we make a big choice or decision, or even like what may seem like a small choice or decision, when you really sit with it, you may be like, oh, damn, this is going to impact multiple people, or this is going to have a lingering effect. It's really important to just slow down before making the choice or the decision. Get all the information, do all the research, be as informed as possible so that you can make the best choice or decision possible. Okay. The more information that you have, the more confirmation that you get, right? The more security that you feel with the decision or the choice, right? So just keep that in mind, all right? But yeah, there's gonna be woundedness coming up with social groups and with friends and stuff like this as well during this full moon. We have Chiron in the 11th house, so there's an opportunity to heal our relationship with our social network and also to kind of maybe even embrace new connections and new friendships and stuff like this. There's been a lot of new people coming into our life. We started seeing this during Libra season, like October, November. A lot of new energies, new people coming into our life, whether it be friendships or whether it be romance, lovers, whatever. And I think a lot of the connections that are coming in right now, they have a lot, they're like they're karmically aligned connections, but they're also coming in to help us heal something, to help us work through something, or to help reveal something um, in our life or within ourselves, or to even like help us forward. I've really been seeing this right now. There's been people have been entering our life to help us move forward in some type of way, to, get help to like give us a stepping stone, to give us clarity, to give us direction, to support us in some type of way. We really want to lean into that right now. We got to lean into allowing other people to support us, to help us, to give to us. We got to learn how to receive. We got to learn how to ask. We got to learn how to talk. We got to learn how to listen. Okay, Gemini things. Gemini things, all Gemini things. Allowing yourself to be supported. Okay. Um, Closed mouths don't get fed, right? It's an old saying. So if how do you know if you don't ask? Right? How are you ever gonna know if you don't ask? Right? If you don't question, if you don't, open up the dialogue and get it moving, right? So yeah, okay. But I love you all so much. Happy full moon in Gemini. I gotta go because I gotta jump into my work day. I'm gonna go ahead and post this on YouTube. It's gonna be one full video on YouTube, but on Instagram it's gonna be two different lives because I did get cut off in during my first live. So, but happy full moon in Gemini. I love you all so much. I'm gonna be opening up more slots for readings the week of the 15th to the 19th of December. Okay. I'm gonna be closed for readings, I believe. Yeah, Christmas week I'm gonna be closed and also New Year's week. And then I'm gonna be getting back to readings on January like 5th and 6th. Like so that week, the 5th to the 6th of January, I'm gonna be opening up for readings again and my January calendar will be open. Um, I've had quite a few people ask about gift cards, so I am working on that. I almost got the finished version of the gift cards for readings. So the way that works is if you are interested in gifting somebody a session with me, DM me or email me, and we'll go ahead and get that all set up. And then what I will do is I'll give you the gift card for you to give that person. I'll email you a little thing and you can like print it out or whatever for them so that they can redeem that gift card with me for the reading. Okay. But yeah, if you are interested in that, or if you want, if you want to like gift someone a session with me for Christmas, just DM me or email me and then we'll set that up and we'll get that going. Okay. But I love you all so much. Happy full moon in Gemini. Have some fun. You know, this is a really beautiful full moon to like write, to journal, to dialogue, to converse. This is also a really good full moon to do any kind of uh short local travel. So if you want to like, let's say you want to go to the lake for the weekend, or I mean it's cold over here. It's like winter time. What do you do on the weekends in the winter time? I don't know. You want to go, to the look at Christmas trees. You want to go shopping, whatever it is. You want to do that in community and connection with others. It's really beautiful full moon to do that. Any kind of short local, travel, really good full moon to do that. And also kind of like healing our connections with our extended family. I think that's it's an opportunity. This full moon's giving us opportunity to really heal our connections with, our aunts, uncles, siblings, things like this, extended family, and that just may be a focus. That just may be, or even them, hanging out with them or seeing them again. That just may be a theme. So. All right. Mwah. Besitos. Have a beautiful, blessed day. Take care of yourselves. Be well. I love you all so much. Thank you for hanging out with me today. And I will see you around. Okay? Okay. Mwah. All right. Bye.